अटक गया.
It has started. It's showing.
Setting up, halfway there.
So I can start as soon as it starts.
हाँ, yes. क्या हो रहा है? Video private settings वगैरह. Okay, so we're live. I think you can start.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in today. I hope you had a good Wednesday. And if not, probably you'll be ending the day with certain perspectives that will help you to introspect of how your relationships have been, how breakups have been, and how they felt back then versus how it is now. I would like to request anybody who wants to switch on their camera, they can. It's a space for you to also interact with me, ask me questions. I welcome you to the Wellness Wednesday with MindSmith. Today, we are here to talk about how breakups are and how to heal from it. So, the challenges that you will navigate while you'll be working through a breakup is what we're here to talk about. But before that, I'd also like to talk a little about what breakups are and how the impact of it feels to all of us. So, breakup being one phenomena, one experience that is globally experienced by everybody at some point in their life, either with a partner, either with the friends, with family. The relationship breakup is what you may experience globally, but that experience is yet so personal. So even if it's like a global phenomena, the experience of it is very, very personal. For some, a breakup might look like a window to growth, to evolving, versus to some it might look like the end of the world. It might feel like the end of the world. It might feel that there's nothing beyond this what they can do in life, versus to some where relationship breakups might feel like nothing has much changed, so they would just carry on with their lives like it has nothing to do with them. However, what we need to understand is that it does evoke certain physical and emotional response that you may experience, but how you deal with it, how you work with it might be different. So there's this theory by John Bowlby about attachment styles, and I know most of you might not know about it, but have heard about it. So just to break it down to you, John Bowlby actually talked about how early caregivers ke saath, whatever relationship that you have, it will impact significantly on the relationships that you form as you grow older. So what he did is gave a few attachment styles, particularly three attachment styles that I'll be talking about today is one, secure attachment, two, anxious attachment, and three, avoidant attachment style. Now, these are the most dominant or present styles in most of us. And how an experience of a loss or a breakup or a relationship is felt by all three varies. And hence, there could be days when, you might be just sitting and thinking, yeah, I felt bad. मुझे बहुत बुरा लगा था that, this person left me and I was miserable. Versus this person who was going on trips, hanging out with friends and family right after we broke up. Like there was no one day of them feeling remorse or some sort of want to come back. But then they did come back to me after I was done healing from that breakup. And this happens because what the attachment theory actually says is that a person with secure attachment style might actually experience breakup with an understanding that, okay, this did not work out. Maybe both of us had certain ways that it wasn't sitting well with us. And maybe now I can actually work on myself, see where I lagged, see what are other needs of me that I gave up on when I was in the relationship, what are the mistakes that I made, and how I can grow. What are the things that I didn't do that probably led to the relationship falling apart, and how I can work on it. So this is how a secure attachment would probably take breakup as, versus somebody who has an anxious attachment style. Now, for this person, a breakup would feel like the end of the world. For them, the emotions are going to be extremely intense because it comes from the fear of abandonment, from the fear of being left all by themselves when they were so invested. And how anxious attachment feels during a breakup is very, very similar to not knowing what to do next. So the emotions are intense, the feelings are intense, and they find it really hard to let it go. Compared to avoidant attachment, which is a complete opposite to what an anxious attachment would look like. Avoidant attachment styles, people with those attachment styles would actually suppress their emotions to a point where they would not even show how bothered they are. And aisa nahi hai that, people with avoidant attachment do not feel for you or do not feel the breakup, do not feel the intensity of it. They do, but they suppress it so damn down that in the initial period of the breakup, like when the things are just fresh, it's very, very, very difficult for them to actually express, to deal with it. So what they do is, as the name suggests, avoid the situation. There's a lot of avoidance with the avoidant attachment styles. I would like to ask from the audience, what one attachment style do you really relate to right now? Yes, Radhika. Yeah, Radhika.
Hey, so I mean, according to me,
Mm-hmm.
I really relate to avoidant attachment style because, for example, if someone tends to talk to me while during a fight, for example, I tend to shut down completely. I end up like stonewalling them. So it's not just romantic relationships, it's like any other relationship. I tend to just run away.
So, Radhika, if I had to ask you, um, how is that feeling of breakup? Do you think that you feel it less, or is it very equivalent to how somebody else would feel it? It's just that you don't show it. How is that feeling for you?
For me, during the breakup, I think so. Like prior to the breakup, it's very intense. During the breakup, it feels a little bit more of like relief from that stressful situation. And I don't feel the impact of the breakup for a very long time till it hits me after maybe a week or two or three. So
Correct.
that's
Correct. So that's exactly what I was talking about when I was saying that these attachment styles that we have may actually impact of how we experience breakup. But at no level does that define of how much you were in love with or how much did that impact you, because the impacts can sometimes be covert. Sometimes you might not be able to see the impact that it's creating on you emotionally and physically. There are people who after a breakup actually tend to lose a lot of weight. They tend to uh, not be really active with the work that they used to do. They might not feel interested in anything else, any activity in their lives. And that is because the impact is very, very significant in all of your spaces. But how you cope up with it actually depends on your attachment styles. There's after talking about all of this, there's another theory that is coming to my mind when I'm talking about breakups. When you experience breakup, there are specifically 5 stages that you might actually go through, and in no way these stages are supposed to be linear, as they could be like you could experience the first stage pehle and then the directly the fourth stage and then the last and so forth. But these 5 stages are actually very common to most of our experience, no matter what uh, attachment style we come from. So this is the 5 stages of grief, which was given by Elizabeth Kubler and Ross. What she talked about was what they were trying to mention in the entire theory was how we process grief. And a lot of times when we talk about grief, what comes to our mind is loss, probably, deaths, and probably losing someone. But it's not necessary that we lose someone due to death, right? We can lose a person, we can lose a relationship, we can lose something very significantly important in our lives, and it can evoke the same intense emotion of grief, of the need to grieve by that certain situation. So that's what we when we experience breakup, we actually tend to experience loss. And with loss comes these 5 stages, namely denial. So initially you might deny that this has happened. You might try to tell your, like, there's a lot of suppression of what's happening. So you might just not accept only that, a breakup has happened, this person might not be a part of your life anymore, etc. And then comes the anger stage, where once the entire thing sets in, you start to feel the anger, you start to feel the resentment towards your partner, towards the fact that, this could have happened, and yet we are at a stage of breaking up, we are at a stage of falling apart. And with this anger comes a lot of reaction. So you will see a lot of times when people go through breakups, and especially breakups which has some form of situations where a partner feels that my partner has not done enough, my partner was not present in the relationship. They might have not brought it up probably during the time they were trying to figure out the relationship. But what happens is that when the relationship ends, and when this entire thing sets in that we are going to part ways, this partner starts to feel that it was the other person who did not make enough efforts to make it stay, and hence starts with that entire anger emotion, with that sort of resentment, and then starts to react. So a lot of aggressive conversations and blaming could happen at this stage. After anger comes the bargaining stage. At the bargaining stage, what the person is trying to do is bargain, literally bargain, and try and make sure that, just stay, just try, just work it out with me. And a lot of what ifs, a lot of what if we could have done this, if that, blah blah, all of these things starts to happen. And with what ifs comes a lot of self-blame, a lot of guilt, because when you come at the stage of bargaining at what ifs, you start to see, okay, my partner is not ready to do anything. How about I do it? How about I change a lot of things? Maybe I didn't do this enough. Maybe I wasn't the right person. Maybe I was not fulfilling the needs of my partner. And here a lot of guilt, a lot of self-blaming starts, a lot of hit on your self-esteem starts, and you start to bargain, you start to say, think about what ifs, you start to think about what are the possibilities of how to save it. But post which comes the stage of depression, comes the stage where, okay, the acceptance sets in. But with this acceptance, there's a lot of changes that has occurred in your life, which is creating a lot of disturbances. This particular stage will come with a lot of sadness, will come with withdrawals from your friend group, from your family circles, from activities that you used to like. So I don't know how many of you have experienced it personally, but there are people who tend to isolate themselves the moment they understand that, okay, maybe this is the end of it. While healing, social support is a very important factor. But on the contrary, what start doing is to isolate themselves, is to distance themselves. And that isolation, that distance, that sadness is coming from this stage of grief, which is depression. But after all of this comes the acceptance stage, the 5th stage, the final stage, where you do actually realize that, okay, this has happened. Yes, I thought that maybe it was the end of the world, or yes, I lost the most amazing person in my life, and maybe I could have done it differently, but now my partner is not as invested in this as I am. So it's time to move on. So at the acceptance stage, the person tends to accept of what's going on, tends to understand of what can possibly be the alternate ways of living life when this relationship has particularly ended. So that's how a breakup seemingly looks like. I would actually want to ask the audience now that is there a particular stage of grief that you relate to, or an experience that you relate to when I'm talking about breakup? Anybody?
I mean, for me, it has always been denial, which has always been very strong
Correct.
because, I mean, because of that denial, I would always push myself towards distractions and I wouldn't want to talk about it. So the denial part is very strong for me.
Correct. So with this, actually, it takes me back to this concept of healthy grieving and complicated grieving. So healthy grieving actually mentions about how we slowly and steadily grieve and reach to that acceptance level. We reach to a level where we understand that it's not going to be all flowers starting from now, but by the end of it, maybe we'll reach a garden, maybe we'll reach a place where either we'll be able to set up our own garden or we'll be able to find flowers, right? But then there is another side of it, which is complicated grieving, where what people tend to experience is a lot of uh, being stuck, the feeling of being stuck at one stage. So, and when it happens for a very long time, it's very difficult for them to get out of it. So, uh, just to give you examples, just to bring in notice to you, certain movies actually try to show breakups from which people haven't really gotten out of for a longer period of time, as long as, years, 7 years, 8 years, and all of that. And when we talk about that, that's what we're talking about complicated grieving, because here the person gets stuck in just one particular uh, stage. So, taking an example, I'm in no way trying to endorse of how that relationship was or how that person was, but if we take the example of classic Kabir Singh, the movie, what Kabir was experiencing was being stuck in one stage. The grieving was so complicated that everything after that relationship was extremely superficial, was extremely just, out of hand. So that is what complicated grieving is. It's very important for us to keep in touch with our emotions, with our feelings, with our social support, our support pillars, in order to create that line between healthy grieving and complicated grieving. Because as soon as we step into the complicated grieving part, it's a place where you would need a lot of support to get out of, and you would need to step in to take help. And taking help also sometimes feel extremely trivial to a lot of people. I've had people coming to me and being like, it's so funny that I'm in therapy because of one person, because of my ex, because of this one person who controlled my life. And as much as it might sound trivial to you, it is not. It is very, very definite and possible for one person to completely flip your life all over. Because what we don't understand is that relationships are a part of our ecosystem, of our life ecosystem. And when one thing falls apart, it does impact the other factors, other things in your life. Breakup brings a lot of loneliness as well. And as much as people might find it extremely fun or comfortable to be around their friends, during a breakup, that thing changes, because You might want to have fun, might want to enjoy, but something in you doesn't let you do that. Something in you also doesn't want for you to keep on constantly vent and rant about your ex. So what you choose to do is either stay all by yourself, isolate yourself, or actually feel dissociated. Even when you're surrounded by people, you might feel lonely. And yes, some alone time to retrospect can actually help you grow, to focus on self care, to focus on spaces where you need to work upon. But with loneliness, what you need to keep in mind is that slowly you need to start extending support, because extending for support, because what you're doing essentially by isolating yourself, by dissociating yourself, is also losing touch with people, with your social support, with your saving net. And it's very important that you understand that when you're going through a breakup, is it the alone time that you're spending, or are you actually, feeling lonely and you're isolating yourself? Because isolation can be tough, can also be difficult with respect to you getting something out of it. It's not going to help you grow. It's only going to help you fall in a trap of cycle that goes on and on and on and on, with one of the stages that I talked about previously. Moving forward, I also want to talk about how social media is one very major factor in the relationships that the recent generation goes through. And with that, I want to actually put out a question to the audience. How many of you were in a breakup situation or was in a fight with the partner and went back to their social medias? Radhika, yes, go ahead.
I mean, social media in general is sort of like a safety blanket for people who are not ready to face their emotions in general. So, yeah, social media was the easy way out. But also, social media was also the only thing that could connect me to my friends with whom I
Correct,
could actually talk to about the situation.
correct. And Radhika, when I'm also talking about social media, I'm also trying to understand that, were we stalking our ex back then with the social media? Were we going through the profile? Were we looking through the messages?
I mean, in my case, that would be a little difficult because the person I was seeing was off social media.
Correct.
But but again, there are other platforms as well, right? I ended up deleting the number so I wouldn't just keep on going back to the chats or the profile picture or anything else. I just didn't want it in my sight.
Right. Exactly. So, what happens a lot of time, that, as you said, Radhika, for some people, social media can actually become a place of safety net, a place of them being able to express themselves very easily, rather than, them going personally and talking to people. They would find venting it out on social media easier. Versus there are times when we actually go ahead to social media to see if a closed door has been left open. And by that, what I mean is that a lot of times we actually go back to check the updates on our ex, or we might open their chat to see if they are online, if they're actually, sending us a text or something like that. And by this, what we tend to do is not really move on, but actually try to control the given setting, try to control of what is happening, understand, make assumptions of what's happening. And hence, social media at times has actually left people feeling more disturbed and confused after a breakup. A lot of times, we actually tend to ask people to not stay in touch or go no contact with the ex. Or even when they're trying to do it, try not to do it through a medium of a public social media. Like WhatsApp and all of these text messages or calls can work. But when you do it in form of stories, in form of, trying to show your ex something, trying to put it out there, it's not a very healthy coping mechanism. It's also a space where we're trying to indirectly communicate, which is a very maladaptive way of communicating. So during breakups, this is very common, and hence I wanted to talk about how social media actually plays a very, very major role. In fact, there are situations where couple goes through a lot of issues because certain things were posted on social media. What do they mean by it? And all of these things. So social media detox can actually be a very important uh, factor when you're actually going through a breakup and you're trying to work on it. Coming to the real aspects of how are you going to heal from a breakup and what is going to be the challenges that you're going to face, I'll be very honest with you. Healing from a breakup is a very personal process. And hence, to me, it might take 2 months, 5 months, 6 months, a year. But for somebody else, it might take more than 2 years. For somebody else, it might take just 6 months to be okay with the idea that, okay, I have lost this person, or I am no more in touch with this person, and now I have to move forward. So healing can be as personal and as different from each other, but there are few very common factors that can help you get through this journey easily. Number one is, which is the most important, is to focus on your self-care. Focus on yourself. With breakups, we tend to focus on the other factors, on the factors that we can take control of, not realizing that the more we try to take control of our surroundings, of what our partner thinks, of what our partner is feeling, we're going to make it worse for us, because we're working on a need to just keep this person with us. But when we start to take care of ourselves, we start to also think in a way which is adaptive. We're also trying to work on ourselves in a way which is adaptive. So self-care is important, which does include you keeping a check of your physical and mental health, your emotional health. Breakups can evoke emotions which are as strong as something which can lead to panic attacks, anxiety attacks. But what you need to do is to keep a track of this, be sure of the fact that you move forward and take help from your people, take help from your social network, from your social groups, from your friends, from your families. And if the need comes, go to a mental health practitioner, a therapist who can help you through this process. Because as we process the grief, sometimes processing it is difficult. Sometimes doing it on your own is difficult, and it can take a toll. It can take an entire toll on your physical and emotional health. It can keep you on a very edgy place. It can keep you at a place where you're constantly in stress, you're constantly in that anxiety. And that's when self-care becomes very, very crucial, because we're also keeping a part of us safe. We're trying to keep a part of us safe. The second thing is that we try and rebuild our identity. So when I talk about this, I want to actually talk about how certain people, especially when they're in a long-term relationship, tend to feel a loss of their identity as soon as they break up. And that happens because a huge, huge, huge part of their life was only with this one particular person. And now, since that one particular person has been taken out, the entire life feels incomplete, feels just superficial. It feels that it has nothing of its own because everything is shared. When you're in a long-term relationship, what you tend to pick up is the mannerism of your partner, the things that they used to like, the things that they used to dislike are left. We tend to also sometimes leave our own interest, our own areas of things that we used to really enjoy. Through this entire phase, the focus has to shift on you back again to rebuild that identity. And rebuilding that identity takes efforts, takes a lot of patience as well. But that should be a focus. And with that focus being in the picture, you can take help from your social networks, from, again, your people, your friends, your family, a therapist, if that's what it takes. So these are the two things that mainly the focus is on. But how do you move on? There's one solution, and I wouldn't even say solution. It's the only thing that actually frees you, which is forgiveness. And I know it's extremely, extremely hard of a feeling, of a thing that you're supposed to do. But with forgiveness comes a lot of power. Because what you do is, until unless you're not forgiving yourself, forgiving the other person, due to which this certain breakup happened or a certain situation happened, you're never going to feel free. You're never going to feel that it's okay. What happened, happened. What you're going to be trapped in is the feeling of feeling helpless, the feeling of resentment, and resentment consumes you. Hence, forgiveness is a very crucial and a very important aspect of healing from a breakup. And nobody's asking you to actually forget what happened. Nobody's actually asking you to accept or, take in something which was absolutely wrong in the relationship. But with forgiveness, what you do is actually accept of how you felt without feeling judgmental towards it. Accept what your partner did or what you did was in that situation, and it was not something that you could have controlled. And now you let go of it so that you can work on the things that you had not worked previously, or the needs that you had let go of for your partner. So forgiveness opens a space for you to actually grow, for you to heal. And hence the three main factors to get out of the grieving stage and come at a state of feeling okay, feeling fine, and feeling the need to move on is going to be self-care, making your own identity, and forgiveness. I'd like to give you a recommendation, in fact, of this book, which is called The Journey from Abandonment to Healing. It's a book by Susan Anderson, and she very, in a lot of details, actually talk about how social support, how emotional support can help you heal. She gives you strategies for resilience, for growing a sense of personal identity in the book. And it's a really good read. You can actually go ahead and read that book. And with this, I also would like to open a stage for Ask Me Anything. You can ask me any questions that you have regarding breakups, how to move forward, and I'll be happy to answer. Anybody? Right. I think for now, nobody's asking a question, but I had put up this Ask Me Anything poll, and what I gathered from that was some common questions, and I'd like to answer that for you. There was this one question that somebody asked, which was a common concern, in fact, that how do I know when I'm ready to date again? And to answer that, what I feel is that you'll only be ready to date again when you're being authentic, when you're entering a relationship for an authentic reason, for a reason which is genuine. Every time you're going to try and get into a relationship or try and date somebody, if it's coming from a space of, trying to move on from an ex-partner, or trying to just get back at your ex, this dating would convert into a rebound situation. And the rebound relationships are difficult to feel emotionally invested in. And hence, you're only going to do more harm to yourself. So, how will you know when you're going to be ready? I think you will know it once you know that you're entering the dating space or the relationship space for a very authentic reason of trying to seek a partner after you've processed of everything that happened in your past, after you have learned of what next needs to happen. You can enter a relationship while you're still healing, but the reasons has to be genuine and authentic, and not to get back at someone or to, find that comfort in someone just because you're feeling lonely and just because there's nobody in your life. Another common question is that, how can I stop thinking of my ex? Well, a very simple answer to that is you cannot. You cannot stop thinking of your ex consciously. However, what you can do is shift your focus from it when it does happen. And I know it's difficult, but it's a part that you do slowly. It will come also with a lot of acceptance that forgetting about an ex, forgetting their existence, or not recalling or remembering them is not going to happen. What's going to happen is that as you slowly move forward in that healing process, you move forward, growing, you move forward, you'll realize that this thought, this person, the memories of it is getting blurred. It's getting passive. It's getting in the back. You're never going to forget the person per se, but you'll start forgetting of how it felt, what emotions it evoked after some time. But initially, what you need to do is just accept those thoughts and shift your focus when it happens. That's it. These were some of the questions that were common, and I wanted to answer. If anybody else wants to ask a question, they can, or else we can wrap up. Any questions? Anybody? Great. I think we can wrap up. Thank you so much for joining in today. I hope you're going back with understanding how breakups are, why all of us experiences differently. And hence, I don't want you to be sitting back and thinking that I am feeling so much and my ex is not. Why is that happening? Well, a lot of it comes from the attachment style or how they saw the relationship, their perspective in the relationship. And it can have to do with something with you, but a lot of it can stem from your attachment styles. I also feel that the stages of grieving is very important. A process of healthy grieving is important. And throughout that process, few factors that are extremely crucial is you taking care of yourself, is you being there for yourself, and actually going out and seeking help, going to your safety net, going to your people and asking for their presence through this time of loss. Because as I said, grieving from a breakup can feel extremely similar to grieving from any loss that happens due to death. And lastly, I want you to be able to understand the power of forgiveness, what forgiveness can do to you and your relationships, and how you move forward in life is extremely, extremely powerful. And once you get the hang of it, it'll be easier for you to move through that healing process. Thank you so much. We will see you next Wednesday with another Wellness Wednesday session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mehak.
Bye-bye.